I'm Ron Ben Israel, and I'm going to show you how to disassemble, cut and serve a wedding cake. We often neglect this part. We often neglect the part of serving the cake, which is as important as putting the cake together. I prefer to use gloves. It's more sanitary. But of course, as long as you wash your hands well, you'll be fine. And this is my favorite knife. This is my favorite knife for cutting wedding cakes. It's really a fish slicer. The reason I like it is because the blade is very sharp and thin. There is no back. So this knife is not like a chef's knife where I would chop things. It's really for slicing. And of course, it's very smooth. I don't want any jagged edges or serrated edge. Now also what will help me is dip the knife into very hot water. This will help to melt the buttercream because the cake is still cold inside, even after it stood outside for a few hours, and it will prevent having crumbs. The first thing with the wedding cake is removing the top tier. This will be saved for the couple, and they could freeze it for a whole year or eat it for the honeymoon. I slide 2 spatulas just under the circle and carefully lift the cake and transfer it to a box or a plate. And that is our gift for the first anniversary. So the center pole is attached to the board and the cakes impale on it to make sure that the tiers do not move from side to side. I do have dowels, in that case wooden dowels. They were inserted into each cake to support the next tier. So these are removed with long nose pliers. Makes it easier to cut. So whatever dowels, support system, columns, we remove in advance. Now we have a choice to make. One could cut the cake like this, finish that tier, then go to the tier below. Or I could separate the cake and have few people work on the same cake, and that will speed up the service. So it's a choice. So as the tier go down, they're heavier and heavier. After releasing this tier, I'll slide my hand here just to make it easier for me to lift. So if it's a large party, I will separate all the tiers and few people can work on them at the same time. Once again, remove the support dowels. And I'm ready to cut the cake. So I have my trusted knife dipped in very hot water, gloves, rag, plates. So I lift the knife and it's very hot now, so it will cut through the buttercream. And let me look at the cake. This is 7 inches. Most of the 7-inch diameter. Most of the slices, when I plan slices for serving, they would be averaging 2 inches wide, the height of the cake, and about 3/4 to an inch thick. So since this is a 7-inch cake, I have 2 options. I could divide it into 4 and have them slightly than 2, or I can divide the cake into 3 and have very large portions. I like large portions. So I divide the cake into long ridges. The first one will go all the way down, and the second one will come about here. I'm just marking it now. So this is very different from the traditional way of cutting wedding cakes. Traditionally, you would make circles and then cut an outer ring. I'm not fond of that system because to create a ring, that means bringing the knife up and down, and introducing more crumbs from the inside towards the outside frosting. Cutting the cake into long ridges all the way down is very neat. And now all I have to do is cut portions on the bias. So I start at the top, let's say 3/4 inch, and all the way down in a straight line, and I can flip the cake into my gloved hand. And that's the first slice. You can also work with the spatula and flip the slices into the spatula, but because I'm wearing gloves, I can use my hand. So all the way down until the knife meets the board, and then flip the slice onto the waiting plate. That system is very efficient because I can decide in advance how many portions I'll produce. I know that I divided the cake into 3. This is 7-inch round, so I can have at least 7 slices here, if not more, if I make them thinner. And then I will have about 5 from each side because these are narrower. So in advance, I'll know how many servings there are on each cake. Now I want you to look inside the cake. We have layers of chocolate cake alternating with the vanilla cake, and blackberry alternating with chocolate filling. The blackberry buttercream is studded with fresh blackberries. Now observe how thin is the satin ice fondant, about 1/16 of an inch. Satin ice is very economical. It stretches really well and it's not transparent. So once the cake is iced with good quality buttercream, all you need is a very thin layer of satin ice to encase the cake. And the flavor complements the flavors of the cake and the buttercream. And I have some forks ready. Good cake.